All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Will. I'm the Vice President of the Hillsborough County Special Education PTA, or HCSEPTA. You can find out more on our website. I'm doing my quick little plug, hcsepta.org, to find out more about what we're about and what we're doing. But we are excited to share with you some helpful information about the wonderful IEP binder. So I want to paint a picture for everyone to get started. So imagine with me, if you will, you're in an IEP meeting. All right, so we're in nightmare range, right? We're in an IEP meeting. This is a good one. You're sitting around the table and someone on the team, a teacher, an admin, a counselor, someone, they ask you a question. They say, hey, do you happen to have a copy of such and such report or evaluation or test score or diagnoses or something like that, right? And you go, yeah, I think I do. So you pull out your phone, right? And you're scrolling through your emails. It's in here somewhere. I think it's here. I think it's here. Now you're off your game. You're a little discombobulated. You weren't ready for that, right? You didn't have that in mind. And they're waiting and they're getting impatient and everyone just wants to get out of here. And it's a nightmare, right? We've all been there. We have all had that happen where, yes, I have that piece of communication somewhere. Well, like it's somewhere, but I have to find it. Is it a text? Is it in the classroom app from the teacher? Did I write it down somewhere? I don't know where it is, right? But now imagine, same scenario, you're sitting there and they say, hey, do you happen to have, do you remember what was on the IEP last time? Or do you happen to have that report? And you go, let me just open this little binder here. Here it is, right on this tab. Here's my evaluation. Here's that communication from the school. Even if you're, nope, we didn't talk about that last time. In fact, here are the notes that we signed, right? That is so much better feeling when you are organized and prepared and you are confident in the IEP meeting. And if you are confident going into those meetings, it is going to do wonders for the results and what you're going to get in regards to supporting your kids. So that's what we're here to talk about. This is not a session, like I'm not going to turn you into a lawyer tonight. Like you're not going to be memorizing special education law or rules. We are not, that takes a long time to get those kinds of degrees. We are talking about the binder, about how to be organized so you can be confident, less overwhelmed, and ultimately better prepared to work part of that IEP team to get the support that your kids need. Right, so we'll start with looking at what are our objectives today. Again, we are not going over every accommodation. We're not going to write an IEP together. We're not going to read an IEP because that takes forever, right? Instead, we're going to be focusing on how to organize our information, what kinds of materials are most helpful, and how this binder can support you before, during, and after the IEP meeting. This living, breathing binder will go with you year after year, and it's going to be a huge, huge help, right? So a really good tool. We're going to talk about how to put that together. So real quick, if you join this meeting and you're like, IEP, what's that? It sounded fun, so I thought I'd come to it. Okay, so you and I define fun a little differently, but that's okay. So real quick, an IEP, and there's 504s, they often get confused, and we won't go into the in-depth into this, but just a basic overview. An IEP, which is an individualized education program. These are for students who qualify under IDEA, that's special education law, and it can manifest in a lot of different ways. So some of the most common, you might see a student who is autistic and they have special support needs and accommodations, some other disability, vision impairments, things like that. Like there's all kinds of them that fall under the IEP category. A 504, I'm sure you've heard of this. It creates accommodations, and this is for students who qualify under Section 504, which is civil rights law, right? I've heard people describe it. I don't know if I completely agree, but I've heard people describe it works is that 504 might be like one level, and then the next level up is at IEP, where there's more things involved. And again, it's not the perfect definition, but you get a feel. Now, you typically won't have both. So a student who has a 504 doesn't necessarily have an IEP, and so forth and so on. So that's something just to consider as we're talking. If you're like, I don't know what you're talking about. And this folder, I'm calling it an IEP binder, like this is mine. I'm calling it that, but this could be a 504 binder. This could even be like, I don't have any support needs or accommodations, but I just want to keep track of what's going on at school. This can help. Because if you're like me, you want to have that accessible so you can get to it when you need it. All right, so why are we talking about a binder? Remember that scenario that we started with? Like you're in the meeting and now you feel unprepared, off your game a little bit, and it doesn't feel good. And it can really throw you, especially if it is a more complex conversation, or maybe the relationship with that team isn't quite where you want it to be. right? And so when they're asking for that last year evaluation, instead of digging through everything looking for it, you just flip your binder. And I've heard parents tell me, like, when they use the binder, when they talked about reading progress, for example, she was able to open it up and she has works, sample works, reading and writing exercises, and she can say, look, we can see the progression as things got better with these supports, or we're seeing that these supports aren't really getting the job done. We're still struggling. So there's evidence, there's data, there's something that you can show, and it's right there in the binder. And so the team can see that, and then you can use that to make decisions. So that's one of the biggest things you're going to find in these meetings, if you've been a part of them or not, is that they like data, right? We'd like to make decisions based on what we have evidence for. So just like, well, I feel like maybe we're struggling with math. That's not going to get any help in an IEP meeting, but showing, here's our tests, here are our evaluations, here are the exams that we're taking, and all of that. And I see someone here says, like, they have a Google Drive folder, and I love that. But let me tell you, so I use Google forever. I have a copy on Google. This is powerful. So if you're a digital person, bring that on an iPad, on a computer, on your phone, do it. Yes. This, however, when you come into that meeting, this shows them, don't mess with me. I'm prepared, right? So it's not meant to be like an intimidation tactic. I don't mean that. But when you walk into those meetings, you want them to know that you are organized, that you have that information. They'll learn that. If it's digital and you're saying, hey, I've got it here on my phone, they'll learn that very quickly. I like the visual, that's me. But what this does, whether you use a digital version, whether you have an actual physical binder or anything in between, you're keeping everything in one place. So that makes it much easier to find things. The meeting's gonna go a lot smoother. What's other nice about this is you can show your child's story. So the IEP binder, yeah, it has all this information and evaluations and things, but it also tells the story of how school is going. We see trends year after year, meeting after meeting, evaluation after evaluation. We can see things are getting better, things are getting worse, things are staying the same. And that can help guide the way that the meeting goes, right? And it builds confidence. My first IEP meeting, can I tell you, went in, my son was going into VPK, and I had no idea what to expect. I did think like these are like these big battles with the school, and they were so nice, and they railroaded me. And I was embarrassed afterwards because I didn't realize, I didn't know what I was doing going into it. So I was just like, oh, well, how does this work? And they said this way. And I said, oh, okay. And what about this? Nope, it works this way. This is how we do it. And it wasn't until afterward when it didn't sit right. And I started talking to other parents, and I was like, nope, that was that meeting. They completely, whether they did it on purpose or not, like kind of got taken advantage of and pushed right through it. But I didn't have confidence. I didn't know what to expect. And so when you have this organization, you're gonna feel confident. And again, it shows them that you are informed and that you are prepared. And you're gonna see, I'll show you one of my favorite tips on this later. A little bit of like a peacock, you know. But let's talk about some of the must-haves. There's a lot of stuff I should mention that in an IEP binder, it's gonna look a little bit different for everyone, right? Because every student has different needs. They're gonna have different evaluations. They're gonna do different assessments. They might have years of IEPs that they're loading. It might be brand new, right? So we're gonna talk kind of in a general sense, but just imagine the bottom line is you wanna put in this binder anything that is going to help you in those meetings to advocate for your kid to get what they need so that they can access a good education, so they have a fair shot, right? So we start with the contact sheet. And this, in a day of everything being digital, this may seem redundant, but it's a nice thing to have. And the contact sheet is, I'm looking for it here. I pulled out all my blank copies so I could show it. So this is an example. I know you can't see it very well, but this is a sheet. It's just like a grid. You can make one in Excel or Google Sheets. It can be a piece of notebook paper. But we want to have information for all the people that work with us on this team. So the easy ones are your kid's teacher, if they have a homeroom or main teacher, might be admin, like principal, guidance counselors, social workers, school psychologists. It could be the ESE teacher. It could be a VE specialist, right? Any of the people that are working with your student in school. I also like to include other people who work with my son that maybe aren't in school. So we do private speech and OT. We have ABA therapy. We have his PCP, his developmental pediatrician, like all these people here. Now, am I calling his developmental pediatrician, like with a question about the IEP? No, because it's like a 12-month wait list to actually get in and see him. But when someone asks if I need to get something there, it's just in one place. It's very easy to find. That's helpful. It might also be on your phone. I put these contacts all on my phone as well. But I like to have, again, it's just to stay organized. The evaluations and testing, this is another one that you want to have available at your fingertips. And this could be any evaluation that they do at the school. So you requested an evaluation for occupational therapy. Hey, my kid's having trouble holding a pencil. We want to do an evaluation. And then they're going to get back to you with the results of that, right? Or they might do like a preliminary and come back and say, we don't see the need to justify a full evaluation. You're going to take that paper, you're going to print it out, and you're going to put it in your binder. You're going to save it in your digital binder. And I know for some, you might think like, I don't have a printer and like the cost of printing stuff, like that's going to be prohibitive. Completely understand. That's why Google is great because it's free. You can use that drive. But also, can I tell you, go to the library. You can print like 10 pages a day at no cost. It might take you several trips every day going to the library and printing stuff, but there are resources available to help do that if it's going to make your binder work for you, and it's worth it. Current and past IEPs, right? So we want to have last year's IEP, the IEP from the last meeting. Now you might wonder like, how far back do we go with these? Well, it depends. So for me, I like to have, let's say we're doing a meeting once a year. I'm going to have 2 to 3 years. Now, sometimes you might meet twice a year and you might say, well, I don't want, all of those. I just want the past 3 IEPs. I like to have more than one because I like to see the trend. I want to go back and say, we used to do this and now we're doing this. Did it work? Did it not? Some people will put every IEP they ever have. And by the time your kid's a senior in high school, you've got a whole booklet on its own of all those IEPs. That's up to you. I don't think that's necessary because a senior in high school, their IEP in kindergarten probably has very little impact on what they're doing now. I would file those at home somewhere. So you have them, or they're digital and you have just I don't know, for your scrapbook, who knows? But it's nice to be able to go back and look at those things. Progress reports, anything you get from the school that talks about how they're progressing with their goals, with any accommodations that they're using, how they're doing. It's helpful. Again, we're looking at trends. So if we see that something is working, we want to celebrate that. And we want to make sure that we continue doing the thing that works. If we see that something is not working, we know better point to it and say, we've been trying XYZ for this amount of time. We're not seeing any improvement. Maybe we can change things up, right? And then the other one that is a must have is your communication log. This for me, it's just it's a piece of paper. It's a notebook that I write and then I transfer it later into the binder. Any communication you have with the school, anything of note, anything of value. So an email, a phone call, you run into the teacher when you're volunteering at the school and they give you some information, jot down a note. It doesn't have to be like full, but you want to have something that says, I talked to this person on this date, roughly this time, and this is kind of what we talked about. If it is something in writing, so any emails or when you do evaluations and things, they're going to usually have you sign it, or if you have a meeting, they'll have you sign at the end, the notes and everything's there. There's 2 ways that you can go about this. So I just print them out and I put them in the binder in that section. So you'll see, if you can see it, like I got all these little tabs. And actually I got new little inserts because mine are all torn up. So I got some new inserts, I got to put new tabs in them. But each one of these will say like evaluations, communication, whatever. And I just have all those communications in there. And you can see, these are my notes from communication logs. And this goes back a couple of years. I don't need all these in here now. Kindergarten isn't important 4 years later, but I have them. And when things come up, I can go back and say, well, we did talk about this, or we didn't talk about that, or this is what I understood. What did you understand? It helps with any miscommunications. It also, I never want to think that it's a fight, like you're on the same team with your IEP team. Like it is the same team, right? But occasionally there are some misunderstandings. And so when that happens, you can go back very easily and you're not looking through your emails. You're not going, well, I think we spoke on this day. You can have that. So one option, you can put your emails or any printed stuff in the binder in the section. The other is you can have like a small note. I'll show you what that looks like. And all of these, I have to scan these and I will put them on our website so you can have some samples. Where is my communication log? Here I'm talking to you about being organized and I've got my papers all over the place. I was trying to redo this. This is a communication log, like a very simple one. So there's just a little bit, I don't know if you can see it very well, but there's just 4 lines, like little columns, and it just says who initiated, who participated, what prompted, what was discussed, what was decided. And then I can check phone, email, letter, in person. So you can use this and it can just say email, right? And then you might label the email, February 2nd. And then in the back of your binder, or even at home, but I like to have them available, you can have that labeled February 2nd. So you can look at this and say, we were talking about an accommodation. Oh, that was on this date. And then you can go back and find that. So if you want to keep it a little bit neater, that's an option. Again, whatever works for you. I like to have them all together and I label them. I even put like a heading so that I know what was the gist of that. Cause it might be a long email, right? It might be something I can't scan through it. This is one where the digital binder works very well, is because you can often just search for a word phrase and it'll find the document that has it. So that's a really good option for that. But it could be anything from like, on this day I spoke to so-and-so about safe hands on the playground. I spoke about, homework, whatever it is. Having some kind of note will be very, very helpful. And yes, someone asked, will I share the template? Absolutely. All of these are going to be, I'll put them on our website, which is always a work in progress, hcsepta.org. Also, I should have said this at the beginning, when this is being recorded, and we will edit it and we will send this out to everybody who registered. So you'll have a copy of this presentation and then we'll include some links. So give me like a couple days, a week to get all of this put together and out there for everyone to have. And then you can share it with your friends. And the beauty is you can adapt it. You can make it whatever you want. So some things I call additional value. These are things, I was trying to make it sound cool, like these are the things you have to have, and these are things that would be nice, but really you should have all of these as much as it makes sense. So student work samples, again, this will vary a little bit depending on where your focuses are, but if you have a student who struggles with, let's say, writing, grabbing 1 or 2 samples throughout the year to kind of show the progress can be really helpful. Again, you're showing this works, so let's continue this support, or this isn't working, can we change things up? And because, again, we're looking at data, and some things are hard to put into a data format. So you can't really like, how many writings did you do? Like, that's not a quantitative thing. It's not as easy to do. Now you can look at, are they writing the letters correctly and using the right spacing and those kinds of things, but it's much easier just to show it. Like, you can see a difference between someone who writes at a kindergarten level, someone who writes at a 3rd grade level, someone who writes at a 6th grade level. Like, you can see the difference. And as we're progressing, we want to be able to show that. Behavior notes or teacher emails, like this might go into your communication log. You might separate those out, because if it's a student who has focus on behavior, you might separate that out so that you can find those things easier. And if you do have a student who's focused on behavior, you probably have a big section for this, because they love to send us lots of notes about lots of things that happen. Another one I recommend, and I will link to this so you can have it, but the procedural safeguards, and notice this is something that, for those of us here in Hillsborough County, I'm assuming most of us, this is where we are. This is something from the state of Florida. And this is a document, so this is one of my secret tips. Read this, don't just put it in there. Read this. This talks about the different rights that you have. It talks about IDEA, it talks about prior written notice. This is documentation that you get. Access to rights and fees and differences of procedures. Like, this is kind of like the contract that you have with the state on what, how this stuff works. So read it, highlight things, make notes. That is important. So I put this in the front of my binder. Now, am I referencing this at the meeting? Not necessarily, but this is in the front of my binder. I have it open. I don't use, like, the first page is just like some safeguard notices, things like it's open to one of the pages that has laws, IDEA, or there's some other websites, like some things. And I kind of put that out there so the people at the table can see it. Am I trying to intimidate them? No, but I want to be taken seriously. And so sometimes the binder will help, but they say like, ooh, this person has read the law, and the highlights make it look like you're really smart, right? So a little secret hack for you. I do recommend, don't just highlight random things, because if they do ask you about it, you want to be able to say, yes, I did read this. And if you're like, I don't understand it, that's understandable. The beauty is you can take this, you can upload it into ChatGPT or Claude, you can ask it questions, you can search it, you can learn a little bit more what this says and how it applies to your situation, right? So that's a good one to have in there. And this could, if I put procedural safeguards, this could be the Family Bill of Rights. You could add any legal things. And so some of these may be more appropriate to you than others. So for example, if your student receives ABA services, then you may print the law that has to do with ABA in Florida, right? Because there's some vagueness to it and there might be some misinterpretation of it. So you can say, hey, no, actually I have the law printed right here. This is how this works. If your student does not receive ABA services, printing that and putting in your binder will serve you no purpose. It might actually look kind of foolish, because they're gonna like, why, your student is dealing with this, not that. That doesn't make sense. So that's why I go back to the customization of this. Anything that's going to help you in that meeting. And finally, outside evaluations. And this could be private evaluations that you either pay for or go through insurance, or if you request like an additional evaluation from the school district and they give an outside evaluation, you want to have these in here as well. I personally, I mix those with the other like the private evaluations and the school evaluations I put in the same place, but I do have a separate section for evaluations for things that aren't like, dare I say, like true therapy. And that may not make a lot of sense. Loosely defined, like we did a music therapy 2 summers ago, and she wrote a little evaluation. So I have that in there. So it's not like an official, I mean, music therapy is real. She's a licensed graduate degree holding music therapist, but that's not something the school is like asking, like, hey, what kind of music therapy have you done? That's not coming up. But she had some insight about working with my son that is useful. Now, it doesn't necessarily feed into the IEP directly, but there's some characteristic things and things that work to like get him going, to keep him on task, to answer questions, things like that. That's helpful. We did a DI floor time. We did a summer camp where they wrote a little evaluation in the summer. I keep all of those because it's more insight from other professionals. So they may not be teachers, but other people who've like evaluated the kid. Like, let's get those notes in there. Right, and then we have tools of the trade. This is really simple. So I have this little, I got a new one. I'm very excited. You see my binder was pretty beat up, so I'm replacing everything. This just has some simple things in it. I would say any office supply that you find useful, but the ones you definitely want to have, something to write with, because you're gonna be taking notes. Your sticky notes, because you might want to make a note and stick it right on the page, so you don't have to write on the page. That might be something like to follow up on. It might be something you want to come back to. These come in handy, trust me. I have a highlighter in here, and I even have like some sticky tabs that if I need to mark something. And I have a little, I haven't used it yet, but I have a little stapler. It's so cute. Look at this. Look at this. Can you see this? It's so cool. I've not opened it yet because I haven't needed it, but one day I'm gonna need a little stapler and I will be ready. That's also my personality, so. And I know like this seems like we're going over this very quickly because it's a really simple concept. I'm gonna go back to anything that is gonna help you advocate for your kid. Any evaluation, anything that you can track the progress, anything that shows report cards, right? Like those fit, and to me that fits under the evaluations and progress reports. Like things you're getting from the ESE teacher, things you get from the speech teacher at school, anything like that that you can track the trends and that you can use to support if accommodations are working or if accommodations are needed. This works even if maybe you don't have an IEP, but you've requested the evaluation to get started. You've noticed something, maybe your doctor said, hey, we have some concerns, we want to explore this. That first meeting when you go in, you may not officially have the IEP, but when you first have that talk with the school, having that data, that information can be super helpful and kind of guide things. So let's talk real quick about preparing for the meeting. So this binder will help you be prepared. It can be your little Bible if you want. It can be your confidence booster, but we also want to be ready in other ways as well. So I don't want to leave you hanging and say the binder will do everything because you have some work to do too. First, request drafts of the IEP ahead of time. I was very fortunate when we came to the school we're at now in kindergarten. I had like a week's notice. They gave me a week. They gave me the draft a week in advance. It's awesome. I had time to look at it. I had time to like really dig into it, understand it. That's not common. So usually you're not going to get a week. I like to think 48 hours is reasonable. Say, hey, we're having a meeting on Friday. I'd like it on Wednesday. And you have to ask for that because they may not just do it for you. And we also have to consider, just to put on the side of the school, if you're having an IEP meeting in, let's say, April, so is everyone else. So the chances of getting it early might be a little bit more difficult because the people who are working on these are writing a million of them, right? So take that in consideration, but you're usually going to have a month's notice when this meeting happens. So you can say, hey, can we get a copy early? We want to look at this because it gives us a chance to review. It gives us to catch errors and even prepare questions. Like it's going to make things go a lot smoother and you're not going to be stuck in the moment because it's overwhelming. Let's admit it. You're sitting at the table, and even though you're on the same team, there's at least 4 other people sitting at the table with you who it feels like maybe they're the ones, the adversaries, right? They're not, but it can feel that way. It can feel very overwhelming. And then you might forget like, oh, I forgot I was going to ask this, right? So we want to have a chance to do that. This was the next one. Bring your questions. come ready with questions that you have about anything involved in this. Now you might, asking like, what did he have for lunch today? Unless that's an issue in the IEP, like you can save that for another time. But anything to deal with that IEP, accommodation supports, how the student is doing in different areas, like write them down, and then that'll help you keep focused on the priorities. Because these meetings, it's very easy for them to get sidetracked. They start telling stories about what happened in class and about this and about that. And before you know it, you've moved past some things and you're like, what just happened? So when you have questions, you can check them off as they're asked and as they're answered. Again, I don't think it's on purpose, but occasionally you might ask a question and they answer it, but they don't actually answer the question. They just say something kind of related. And you might say, hey, that's great. Thanks for sharing, but let's get back to my question, right? It's like watching one of the trials on TV with Congress where they ask them questions and they talk about something completely different. Like that happens in real life. It's not always on purpose. It's just that's the way we do it. When you can, share your documents in advance as well. Because remember, you're on a team, and I get it. Some of us have had very contentious IEP meetings, like where it feels like we're going to battle, and I'm so sorry that happens to us. It shouldn't feel that way. It's not supposed to. Many of us have like really good experiences, and some of us have just like, it's good and bad. It's not perfect, but it's not horrible. But we are on the same team. And so if you have evaluations from your speech therapist, or maybe your physical therapist, or maybe a doctor, it's okay to share those, with what you're comfortable with the people doing this, because it might support what you want or what is necessary. Like it might help them, and you don't have to fight for it in the meeting because they have a chance to look at it and think about it and implement it in a way that makes sense. You can also consider a support person. So this is another way to prepare for these meetings. You can really bring anyone you want within reason to these meetings with you. And so I know we automatically think like, oh, we must be talking about an advocate, someone that we pay possibly a lot of money to accompany us to these. It could be that. It could be an advocate. And it saddens me that sometimes the best way to get a free and public education is to pay a lot of money for someone to come to bat with you. That saddens me deeply, but it doesn't have to be an advocate every time. Like for those who can do it and need it, it's a great resource. There are some resources out there for people who maybe don't have the funds, so we can always look at those. But you can bring, like if you have an ABA therapist, a BCBA, or a case manager that works with your kid outside of school, they may be willing to come to the meeting with you because they can offer additional insight. They may also, the big thing is they might have the language to express the thing that you want to say. Like if you're like me, you talk and you're like, I don't know if they understood me because it's not changing the way things are going. And then a clinician comes in and says almost the same thing, but slightly different wording. And everyone's like, oh, I get it. Now, is it because they used the right language or because they took it more seriously, because it's a professional of some kind? I don't know, but it doesn't matter. You can invite them to come. If you have a neighbor or a sister who just helps you stay calm, they don't have to say a word. They may know nothing about special education, but they're going to come and just be there to hold your hand and to look at you and let you know that you have support. You can bring that person with you. And that can be a huge, huge help, especially if you're new to the process, if you feel overwhelmed, if it does feel like they're coming at you. Because sadly, these meetings can feel like attacks. They're not supposed to be. But what happens is you're talking about behaviors. You're talking about areas of need. By nature, those are talking about things that aren't going as well as maybe you'd like them to, which leads to this last thing is make sure when you're preparing, get ready to highlight successes. This is the thing that kills me when I go to these meetings. It wasn't an IEP meeting, but last week, we called a meeting, or the school wanted to meet and talk about like ways we can motivate my kiddo, because it's beginning of the year and we're struggling, and that's a normal thing for all of our students, and some of our students who have strict routines. It's definitely more challenging. And they said, we just want to talk about that. And we went through all the things that weren't going well. And at the end, like, I'm just feeling defeated. Like, my God, like, is it this bad? It wasn't that bad, but it just felt that way. And I said, can someone tell me like what is going well? Like, please remind me that he is like, this isn't all bad all day. And they're like, oh my gosh, yes, this is going well. This is going well. This is going well. And I was able to point out, here's what I'm seeing at home. That's a really cool improvement. This is better than what we saw last year. This is better than what we saw the year before. Like, we want to focus on those things too, but please don't forget to focus on the successes and the good things that are happening. We tried a new incentive program and it worked. We changed the way we, make instructions, the way we provide homework, and it worked. Let's talk about that. Let's highlight that, and let's make sure that we continue doing it. Right? That's going to help us. We're getting close to the end. But building confidence in the way that you come to these meetings, that's another piece of it. If you go in scared and shook up, you might lose track of what's happening. You might forget to ask that question. You might forget to push back when you hear something that doesn't sound right. Right? So we want to be confident when we go in this. The binder is going to help, and it's going to show confidence. Even if you don't feel confident, you're going to make you look confident. And that's important. You're going to stand up, sit up straight. You're going to talk clearly, right? We're going to stay calm. We're going to be clear, right? It's hard not to get emotional in these things because we're talking about our babies, right? We're talking about our kids in class and how they're doing, and it's very emotional. And it's okay to be emotional. Don't me tell you that you can't. Sometimes a couple tears might actually help you. Like, you can read the room, but like, it's okay to have emotions. That is a very normal thing. But when we're discussing the business, we want to stay calm. Throwing tables and yelling, it's definitely not going to get anywhere. And we want to be clear. I'm just going to, this last one says, remember your role. Like, you are part of the team. It may not feel like it sometimes because you have these experts that are telling you how it works and what it does. And I've noticed some of our teachers, our ESE specialists and folks who work in special ed, they've done this a million times. And so sometimes they forget that you haven't. You've only done this once. This is your first time. You've only done this a couple of times. Something has changed and it's not the way that it was last year. And they're very, they might be quick to like, this is what we're going to do. And you say, I just want you to hear what I'm saying. I want to be heard and considered, right? We don't always get that. We want that. We deserve that. But you remember your role, you're part of that team. They can't just tell you what to do. You are part of a collaborative team to decide what is best for your kid. Now you want to, they're with your kids as much as you are. If they're in school all day, they're going to have insight that maybe you don't have. So it's not saying you're going to go in there and demand and you're in control, but you're working together. Remember that. And that other piece in the middle there, use collaborative phrases. It is very easy to walk in and say, you are not doing enough. My kid is struggling. This is horrible. Fix it, fix it, fix it, right? That's what we want to do. I want to scream that daily. Fix this. It is not going the way it's supposed to. But the reality is that's not going to help anybody, right? If someone came and told you that at your job, you're not doing enough. You're probably going to get defensive. You're going to dismiss. You're going to say, what do they know, right? It doesn't help. So instead of that, you might try something like, hey, I've noticed we're still struggling. Can we talk about maybe what else we can do to support him or her or support these kids? Like, hey, we're still having struggles in this area. Hey, this isn't working quite the way we hoped. Is there something else that we should consider? That kind of question, first, a question itself is going to be helpful, but that kind of question where it is collaborative is going to get more miles than anything else that you do. And that's an important piece. And those are things you can write those down, because if you're not sure you can come up with those in the moment, use your binder, put those questions. Hey, I want to talk about this. And again, use the tools out there. ChatGPT, hey, here's what I want to say. Give me a clear way to say this for an IEP meeting. It will be wonderful, I promise you. So in some real examples, one thing I talked about earlier was that binders are not just for one type of student. So it's not like this is my autism binder, this is my apraxia binder, this is my visual impairment binder. It might feel that way because that's where the focus needs to be, but that's not how it works. So if someone's like a reading focus, like that's where the area of concern is, right? You might have more reading samples. You might have more testing. You might have other things in there. If it's behavior or social skills, you're going to have different kinds of evaluations. Your communication charts, you're going to have lots of those, because when there's behavior issues, like there's lots to talk about. Physical accommodations, right? There might be more things in there. It might be doctor's notes. You keep copies in there so that you have them to show like, hey, yeah, we actually do need access to a ramp, or we do need access to XYZ. And surprisingly for some, IEPs actually, they work, it's not just for students with disabilities and students with delays, but also our advanced learners. Well, when I was a kid, they called them a gifted class. I think now they call them like AGP, or there's some other program. They also can have individual education plans. And if you fall into that category, I know some of us have, one kid who's struggling and one kid who's excelling, and we're like, how did they come from the same family, but they did. This binder will help you with those too, because you're tracking how enrichments and supports are being implemented and how they're working, right? So IEPs work for a variety of students with all kinds of needs, and our binder will help us keep track of what's working and what's not. We do want to make sure that we are making this a living resource, and that means this is not a one and done project. As you can see, I tore mine apart. I was working on it today because we have to update it regularly. Now, when and how often is up to you. If you get daily reports from your teacher, you might think that this is going to be one giant binder before it's all over. So you might do something different. Maybe you only keep the last month's worth. You might keep the last week's worth. Maybe you scan all of them and you just highlight the ones that you want to work with, or you scan them and shrink them so you can put a lot of them on one piece of paper. Whatever makes sense for you, right? But we do want to update it. I would say at a minimum, you want to take a look at this, at least putting something in it like every 9 weeks, right? When you get those report cards, because that's maybe only one thing, but if you have an IEP, hopefully you're getting a progress report around that same time, or there's some other things coming in. What I do is on my desk, I have I don't know what they're called. It's like a little acrylic container you put papers, like an inbox, like you see in an office. And whenever we get stuff sent home from school that's appropriate, I just put it in that inbox. And then about every 9 weeks, or if I forget, a week before the IEP meeting actually happens, I pull all those papers out and I make sure I put them in. And that might mean putting new ones in and taking some old ones out. Okay, I don't need these anymore because I have enough of these. Whether you use a Google Drive or something like that or not, I do recommend, if possible, to keep digital backups. Because the last thing you want to do, I'm not going to lie, it's going to take you a little while to put this thing together that first time, because you're going to be looking for all the evaluations and test scores, and you're going to have dibbles and stars and iReady, and the list goes on, depending what grade you're in. You're going to have SAT scores and all these things that you might be keeping in here, and you're going to try to gather all that together, and it's going to take you a while. But once it's done, now you're just updating it. And the last thing you want to have happen is your cat knocks over a cup of water and ruins the thing, or you, God forbid, you forget it at a meeting in the school, like it doesn't turn up or something happens, right? You'll have that digital copy, and you can also search with it. And then as your kid grows, you can share this with them, because our goal is not only that we're advocating for them, but they grow up to advocate for themselves. They can understand what works for them and what doesn't. And so it is like a scrapbook in that sense, but you'll have the data. Now, it's not something, your second grader probably won't make any sense of it, but definitely in high school. And it's going to depend on the student, but this is something you can share with them, something they can even take with them to college. Even it just has like the tips and tricks that they can use to do well. So ultimately, at the end of the day, we're not talking about having a fancy binder. If you want to make it pretty, go for it. My wife, it kills her that I just have pieces of paper printed off in here. She wants to do scrapbooks. She wants to have construction paper and all this stuff. And if you want to go for it, go for it. I would love it to look pretty, but that's not the goal. We want to have what we need organized and at our fingertips. When you walk into that IEP meeting, you want it to be very clear that you are confident, that you're prepared, you're organized, right? You want that to exude from you. You want them to know. Because regardless of how good that team is, you want to be taken seriously, that this is your kid. Like you're not going to war, but you are ready. And this is what's going to help you do that. And most importantly, it's time to collaborate and talk about your kid. You want to have that stuff at your fingertips and ready to go. And so that, maybe not everything you need to know, but a good starting point for how to create this IEP binder. If you don't have one and you've been just using stuff like through your emails and text messages and things like that, this is going to be a game changer for you. If you already have a binder that you keep stuff in, hopefully you heard some things today that you haven't thought of. Yeah, maybe I should add some writing samples. Oh, maybe I should get some of those outside evaluations. Magic. And here's some resources. I think they're trying to copy and paste those that you can use. Take a picture of this. This will also be available like when we make the video out there. Just a quick rundown on what these are. And these are not all the resources that are out there, just the ones at the top of my head I think would be good ones to have. HCSEPTA, that's us. That is the Hillsborough County Special Education PTA. I don't mean to brag, but we're a pretty cool group. And we did win some awards at Florida PTA last year, this last summer for the work that we're doing. We definitely invite all of you to come back to our meetings. You're on our mailing list now, so until you say stop sending us stuff, you'll know about these kinds of workshops. So you can, attend and learn some things and share some things with us. And if you feel so inclined, we'd love to have you as a member. That gives you voting rights and participation in a lot of things that we do. There's also the Florida Department of Education, ESE. This will give you some idea like statewide. Further down, there is the HCPS ESE, that's Hillsborough County, so it's Exceptional Student Education Program. Fiddlers, if you're not familiar with Fiddlers, this is an organization that helps with the evaluations. They have tons of great resources. USF Card, kind of the same. This is run out of the campus. Lots of great resources, social stories. That one's more geared towards autism and related disabilities, but a lot of good stuff there. Disability Rights Florida, Project ABA Rights. These are organizations that help you understand your rights and things when you go into these meetings. Like being informed is going to be really helpful. And then finally, Superintendent's Advisory Council for the Education of Students with Disabilities. This is a group that meets the first Friday of every month. If you go to that website there, you can sign up to be a guest. They meet, most of the time it's in Brandon at the school's office, but it's on Microsoft Teams, so you can attend from wherever you are. And this group, it's different people throughout the community. There's people from training centers and the school district. Sometimes school board members show up, our superintendent's there sometimes, and there's different projects and committees that we do, but also it's a chance for parents to be heard. And honestly, we don't have enough parents coming to this. Now, given they do it at 10 o'clock on a Friday, so it's not easy for everyone to attend, but we want more parents to come, and this is a great chance to be heard by some of the higher ups in the district. So if you have questions, you have concerns, like this might be a good place to do that. It's not necessarily a place to go like air out your dirty laundry, but it's a good place to start rubbing elbows and learning about things going on throughout the county. So that is this presentation. I'm not real good at ending things, so I'm gonna just go here and say thank you. We can open up for questions, and I wanna do things a little differently with any kind of questions and answers for this. And what I mean is, I'm not the end-all expert on all these things. Everyone who's on this call has a different level of experience with this. Maybe you've never had an IEP meeting and you're coming in the first time, but you know your kids. Maybe you've done 100 of these things and you're just like, I'm gonna check this out to see where I can correct this guy. So regardless, if you have any questions, you can use the chat, you can raise your hand, whatever works. And then together, we can see if we can try to solve that or help answer those questions.